The tempo run, also referred to as the threshold run and often described as the comfortably hard run. It is a staple session in pretty much every elite runner and triathlete's training programs. So what actually is it? Now, back when I was racing, I pretty much did a tempo run every single week, but in all honesty, I rarely did them correctly and therefore rarely got the benefit I should have from them, which is exactly why I'm making today's video. Now, a tempo run is beneficial to all types of runners, from milers to marathoners, so they're more or less ubiquitous. So what exactly are they? Well, as I've mentioned already, they are comfortably hard, so they're at a pace that is faster than moderate, but not exactly hard. And if you're familiar with functional threshold power, or FTP in cycling, well, it's quite similar. It's the maximum pace that you can sustain for an hour. And if you use heart rate, then it's between 85 to 90% of your maximum heart rate. But it's important to understand why we do it and its benefit to us, which is exactly what I used to miss when I used to do it. So I'm going to delve a little bit into the science here, because a tempo run should be at or near to our lactic threshold. Our lactic threshold being the maximum pace that we can run at and we can sustain while still clearing lactic acid from our muscles and from our bloodstream. If you push above that lactic threshold, well, our body becomes overwhelmed with this lactic acid. If we stay at or just below that, we can rack up some serious amount of time at this pace. The goal then for these tempo sessions is to run at or just a fraction slower than this lactic threshold, which, folks, is exactly where I used to go wrong. I used to get carried away and run them far too hard. I get involved in all the competition within the session. And admittedly, I did some pretty chunky and impressive sessions in my time, but I was running them far too hard and therefore wasn't taking the benefit home from them that I should have. In fact, it actually had a knock-on effect to the rest of my training and my program. So the big question, what is your lactic threshold and your tempo run pace? Well, you can go for the simple approach and you can just simply run at a comfortably hard pace. There's nothing wrong with that, something like a 7 to 8 out of 10 in terms of the effort level. Or, as I mentioned before, you can use that heart rate around 85 to 90% of your maximum heart rate. Or alternatively, you can actually use some recent running results and the times from that and calculate your pace from that. There's a ton of online calculators out there that specifically work out your tempo pace from this and take all the hassle out of it for you. Or you can do a test to find out your current tempo pace once and for all. And as I mentioned already, it's technically the best pace that you can sustain for 60 minutes. But let's be honest, who really fancies doing an all-out effort on their own in training for 60 minutes? Certainly not me. So all you have to do is 30 minutes as hard as you can in training. This solo 30-minute test should reflect what you might do if pushed in a 60-minute competitive race situation. You want to record the run and your average pace will be your new tempo pace. Of course, there is one final method: heading to a sports science lab and having blood taken periodically during a lactic threshold test. But I'm going to assume most of you aren't planning on that. All right, so hopefully you're sold on the tempo run now. So now let's look at how you might do one. Now, first off, they're clearly quite hard physically and mentally, which is exactly the point, but that does mean that you should only look at doing one of these per week at most. So start off by gradually building them up and getting used to them with time. So starting with the session with short intervals along the lines of 4 lots of 4 minutes at tempo with 1 minute 30 to 2 minutes recovery between each. Ideally, jogging the recoveries if you can. And then you can look at increasing the rep lengths, 4 lots of 6 minutes at tempo, again with 1 minute 30 to 2 minutes recovery between each. And then even reducing the recoveries, 4 lots of 6 minutes at tempo, but now with 1 minute recovery jog between each, meaning you're running almost 24 minutes at tempo straight. Until finally, you can start thinking about sustained tempo runs where you really settle into that pace for a good period of time. Something like 3 lots of 10 minutes at tempo with 1 minute to 1 minute 30 recovery jog between each, building to maybe 2 lots of 15 minutes at tempo with time. And then once you're finally at this point, you can start alternating and varying between these sustained tempo efforts and back to those shorter tempo intervals week in, week out. An important note though is that you should never do more than 40 minutes at this tempo pace in total during a tempo run. Otherwise, it just starts to become too difficult and bordering on a race-like effort. Personally though, if I could just do one run per week, it would be the tempo run. You gain so much in such a short period of time, and also it's just a good test of your fitness week in, week out, because essentially the faster you can run before producing lactic acid, the faster you'll be able to race. So it really is a fantastic workout, and I do really love it, kind of, in a very masochist way. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. If you have, give it a like. Don't forget to head on over to our GTN social media channels, give them a follow, and give us a subscribe just down below.